Welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us. Well, on the 7th and 8th of October, as next week, the Africa Child Trauma Conference will be hosted virtually by Jelly Beanz in partnership with the UNICEF and the Teddy Bear Foundation. The aim is to provide innovative methods to promote child protection within the context of the global COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. This conference will showcase scalable child protection advances relevant to Africa specifically, and allow for the formulation of real action and accountable plans to be devised and implemented across Africa. For more on this very important discussion, we're joined via Zoom by Edith Kriel, the Executive of Jelly Beanz. Edith, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you for joining us here on SABC News, ma'am.
Always a pleasure.
You know, I was just reading a quote by Nelson Mandela saying that there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. And certainly one of my personal favorite quotes from the late statesman. And I just thought to myself, we must really then have a very dark soul if you consider the fact that in our country, in our society, I mean, every day, I must tell you, as a news anchor, I'm talking about children who are either being raped or killed. There is always something in the news, just a reflection of how we treat our children in this country. I mean, when you look at all these stories, and I suppose you're very much in contact with some of these children who are really the victims of this society and what's being done to our children, really can't fend for themselves. What is your reaction to that? And you know, as someone who's actually in the forefront of doing something about it on a personal level, really, what are your thoughts of how we are with our children in our society?
Tata Madiba, I think, really had the right idea in terms of saying that our children really are part of how we express ourselves as a nation. And right now, we are not taking care of our children. Our children are not the priority. We are not putting them first. On a daily basis, we see children who, like you say, have been raped, are beaten, are hungry. Our children, as a result of various different factors, are exposed to violence on a daily basis. We've seen an increase of neglect and abandonment of children, an increase of suicides in children. And I've been around in this field now for 26 years, and every child that walks into my door, through my door, my heart breaks for them, because it's one child too many. We should be a nation celebrating our children, putting our children first, and really saying these children are our future, but we are not. Our children are breaking, and we keep on hurting them. We keep on pushing them down. And somewhere this has to stop. Yeah. We as adults in this country need to take responsibility. We need to stand up, and we need to hold government accountable to the promises that they make. The reality on the ground for our children is shocking. The trauma they experience is horrific. And we cannot keep on going like this. Our children and our families are in severe pain.
Yeah, the Africa Child Trauma Conference takes place from next week, and I really don't want to be a negative, but you know, there are so many talks and conversations around how we go forward in terms of protecting our children and what will be done next. But every time, even after all of these talks, you still kind of hear the same stories, whether it is a child that's been raped. I mean, we're covering a story actually at the moment where 2 8-year-old girls are said have been allegedly raped by their father, a former ANC MEC in the Free State, and their older brother. And these children have gone to a place of safety. Now, that's just one story of the many that we focus on here on SABC News. And my question really is around what would be different? What are the conversations that we're set to expect next week as you hold this child trauma conference, and really how are you promoting it, and what you hope to get out of it, I think is what I want to ask.
So, in reference to the children that you were just referring to, I think it's important to say that 1 in 3 children in our country, boys both and girls, are sexually abused by the time that they are 18. And that's just too much. We continue having this fight. And yes, you're right. We continue signing commitments and agreements and promises. But somewhere we have to say it's enough. And this conference really is, I think, twofold. It is about saying this is the practitioners on the ground, the frontline workers, to be improving their services to children, to be taking care of them, because, of course, working with children who are in pain is very painful. But also to be saying to government and civil society, what is it that you're doing? To be saying, we promise to do something. Put your money where your mouth is and show us, don't tell us, show us in your actions, make it different for children on the ground. And so the key outcome for this conference is to develop an emergency action plan, but not as just another piece of paper that people sign. Because following up from the conference, we will be having quarterly meetings with all of the signatories to this document, to be holding them accountable and to be saying to them, what have you done? This is what you promised, this is what you said, but what have you done? Because at the end of the day, that's what makes the difference to children, is what are we doing? And as a practitioner myself, who has the luxury and the privilege of playing with children every single day, our children are in such pain, and I cannot even put into words the kind of pain and distress that our children are experiencing. And I really want to say it's enough. We need to stand up as adults now and really begin to say no more, no more. And we need everyone to stand up with us in this process. We need government to be prioritizing children and really to be making that a reality.
Now, Edith, when there is a problem, when one is faced with a big problem, there's generally a root cause of that problem. And I suppose it's a bit of a difficult question in terms of me asking, what do you believe to be the root cause of this issue, where we're having such a huge crisis in terms of child abuse in the country? What do you think is the reason we're faced with this situation? I mean, some might say we're perhaps an angry nation, or I fail to understand how being angry then translates to abusing children. But I'm just really trying to understand what you see or understand, or the patterns that perhaps could then be the root cause of the problem, because we can sort of approach the issue on the surface, but if we're not really addressing it from the root, it's just going to spring up again, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think you rightly say it's a complex issue, and to try and be able to just pinpoint, one thing as being the root cause, I think would be irresponsible. But I really do believe that trauma is passed down through generations. And so the legacy that we have in our country of treating people badly is a legacy that gets passed down through generations. So when we ourselves are hurting, pass some of that hurt on to our children, who then pass it on to their children. And the reality of that is that it's not just about how we think or how we feel, but it literally changes the way our brain grows, and how we are able to process emotions, and how we're able to be empathic to other people. And so if we have a space where we have grown up in fear, and we've grown up in a space where childhood is not a safe place, where life is about survival and, every day is a grind. If we add the smallest of things, little stresses on top of all of that, that's when things just get really out of hand. If we think about the pandemic that we've been dealing with in the last months, there's been so many children that life has been bad for them before the pandemic, and the levels of deprivation have now just exploded. And so I really do believe that when we look at how do we deal with this, it we need to say that there are various different levels. It's not just about this individual child or family, but we need to be paying attention on individual, family, community, society level, and understanding the science behind trauma and how healing begins to take place. Africa has many amazing healing mechanisms that we have used in the past, and I think that we need to begin to rethink how can we tap into what our predecessors and our ancestors have used in ways of healing. And I'm referring to things like dancing and singing together. And so the challenge really is about saying it's not just a one size fits all. It's not just on one level issue that we need to deal with, but we need complex, we need to look at it from various different angles and be paying attention on various different angles.
All right, I'm being told to wrap up the conversation, but just very quickly, Edith, for those of us who want to sort of take part and take a look at this conversation or be part of the conference, just very quickly, Edith, if you can tell us how we can make some sort of perhaps a contribution, or whether we partake, how do we do that?
So for those of you who are interested in terms of what's going to be happening at the conference, you're welcome to go and have a look at our website, Child Trauma Conference Africa, where we've got all the information on. You can be following us on Facebook, and as the conference progresses, we will be putting out some of the presentations by various different speakers, and then also at the end of the conference be sharing widely the commitments that have been made by the various different departments and civil society organizations. So even though you might not be able to join us physically, please join us in spirit and begin to think about, you don't need to make a difference on a big scale. Make a difference to one child's life and you've made a significant difference. Look at the circle of care, and you can make a difference for our children.
All right, Edith Kriel, Executive Director of Jelly Beanz, thank you very much for the work that you're doing, and good luck indeed for next week. Certainly something that's very close to my heart, the well-being of children. So I'll certainly try on my part personally to take part in that. Thank you very much for giving us your time here on SABC News.
Thank you.
All right, that's Edith Kriel from Jelly Beanz. And of course, that Africa Child Trauma Conference will be hosted virtually there by Jelly Beanz on the 7th and the 8th of October. So that is next week. And of course, you can certainly get more information. I'd assume you can just do a simple Google search of a Child Conference Africa, and you'll certainly be able to get some information. So do take note of those dates, the 7th and the 8th of October. Well, moving on.